Hunters. Life on the blockchain.
I hope everyone likes it. I found out how to crank up the intro to match my volume, so now it really kicks your ass when you turn it on. Welcome back to Bounty Hunters, episode 30. We are on 30 episodes of talking to elite Chad researchers and kings of the security industry. And it's really cool to have made it this far. We are brought to you by Immunefi, the biggest bug bounty platform in Web3. If you're a white hat, this is where you can earn real money and make crypto safer. But you don't know where to start? Hit the feeling lucky button and let the hunt choose you. We're also brought to you by Rare Skills, rareskills.io/riptide. Get 10% off a boot camp. You want to be a bounty hunter? You need to know how DeFi works, how the math works, how contracts work. Get started. Go to rareskills.io/riptide and get some. Today we have the CEO of Immunefi, Mitchell Amador. Am I saying it right? Amador? Good morning, sir.
It's close enough. Amador, but
Amador.
props for trying. You're going to be Latin in no time. Don't worry.
Dude, where are you from, if you can divulge this info? Where did you grow up?
It's complicated.
I have no birthplace. It's complicated.
I do have a birthplace. You know, I wasn't born in some UFO, okay?
Look, guy.
I'm from Canada. West Coast. Please don't judge me too harshly for it. I didn't choose where I was born. It just happened, okay? It just happened. But the name is Portuguese. Amador. It's a Portuguese name. And that's where I am today. I'm in Portugal.
That is the Portuguese link. Very interesting. My other favorite Portuguese guy that I know, actually I have two favorite Portuguese guys. My man Magellan.
Nice.
And of course, Mr. Marco. Are you aware of this amazing bald security researcher? Resembles Magellan.
I assume by the first one you mean the great Fernando Magellan, the brilliant explorer who also chatted his way around the whole world, only to get killed by Filipinos at the last moment. That one?
That one. I just read the book. Yeah.
Funny story. My co-founder at Immunefi, Traven Keith, he is from the specific tribe of Filipinos in Cebuano that killed Magellan.
And I bet that he lets you know that. That is a big pivotal moment in their history.
Frequently. He makes sure I understand at any moment, you know, if I don't give enough high quality trading goods, I'm going to get it. So I'm watching my back, okay? Now, Matko, are you thinking about the hacker who broke into a bunch of famous Portuguese legal firms and institutions and then leaked all the data to the media?
Whoa. We are talking the king of Axlar and Wormhole. Different hacker.
There are so many Portuguese hackers. Like the whole Portuguese security world is actually quite large and extremely talented. And I don't think that's really well known. So
I don't know. It isn't
different, Matko.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard about Portuguese SRs. Usually it's the Bulgarians that get all the credit, or the Russians, or the French. You know, French for the DeFi. But the SRs are usually Bulgarian. But I don't hear anything about the Portuguese.
No, that's because that's the crypto bias. But in the broader cyber world, you have a bunch of legendary firms that have these Portuguese security researchers and Portuguese hackers, and even some of the OutSystems is one of the Portuguese unicorns, and they're all cyber. And then even some of the big Portuguese, or I should say Portuguese founded businesses like Anchorage Labs was created by Diogo Monica, also Portuguese. And there's a bunch of different characters, different Portuguese security firms you can point to. If you're curious, by the way, about why that is, I find that it's because the Portuguese have this kind of natural paranoia where even though they're some of the nicest, most trustworthy people in the world that you can really rely on, they're super hospitable, they're constantly convinced that the world is out to get them in ways that don't really make sense. And this gives them the perfect mentality to be a security researcher as they stress over things that are actually super safe.
And what's the root cause? Where does that come from, this paranoia?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, look, historically speaking, did it come from, 700 years of warfare with the Moors? You know where it came from? It probably came from the women, because when the Portuguese began the age of exploration in the 1400s, they had no manpower effectively. You had less than 1 million people in this whole state. And they had to ship double digit percentages of their men abroad in order to sustain their massive trading empire. And they could never conquer their way. It wasn't like the Spanish or what the English did. They had to do it almost strictly through um, basically nomadic intermarriage and not quite piracy, but a little bit close to that. But the result is all the women were left behind waiting for their husbands to return, who would come after year or multi-year voyages. And that could have made the Portuguese women exceptionally paranoid about what their men were up to. And they would have been right. If you've ever seen the Brazilian or Portuguese colonies abroad, you would know that they would have been right to be paranoid. So it could have been that. That's my best guess.
And vice versa. The men worried about their women.
That's touche. But the Portuguese women were famously conservative, famously Catholic, famously chaste, right up until I would say the modern times. So I don't know, how, like my own grandmother, when my grandfather died, for the rest of her life, she only wore black. And that was not unusual. Like, they are famously all in. So it could have been both sides. I think that's fair. But I would bet it was mostly the women.
Very interesting. You're quite the history buff, Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, well, I'm a nerd. I deserve it.
I love this stuff, and I feel like I don't have enough time. Like, you end up working too much, and it ends up taking over the things you're passionate about. And when I do get to sneak away with a good book, something I really enjoy and dig into it, it seems like it becomes a rare event, and I really treasure that, because the older you get, the more responsibilities you have. It's just I don't know if you find it the same way, but being able to do that and retreat back into your hobbies and interests is so valued. It's such a great time to just sit and think.
100%. But let me add something to that. And I'm like an avid reader. On a good year, when I'm not slaving away, this is a busy year. I'll be lucky if I read 30 books this year. God willing, I get to even that. But on a good year, I'll go through at least like 80 to 100, long form almost strictly. Mm-hmm. And the thing that you got to understand, I think, with reading especially, is it's such a powerful, in addition to being soul nourishing, like, you feel happier. I could tell the way you talk about it. Like, there's such joy that comes from learning and nurturing your soul and expanding it in that meaningful way, that your soul kind of sings, but it also becomes a competitive advantage, right? I can look historically. Yeah, sure, Immunefi is a particular business, and there are the particular rules of tech, but the rules of business have been played out 1,000 times over in 1,000 different places, and they're mostly the same, right? They're mostly the same stories. The rules of leadership, the same. The rules of great men and great achievements, also the same. And so they act as this, they let me live extra lifetimes. They let me learn the lessons the easy way. They give me a competitive edge. And I still don't read enough for my liking, right? Of course, I get like slammed with work, especially recently. It's been nothing but like 12-hour days. But if you can, you try to book, half an hour in a day and read. And that's instantaneously, just that small amount, an hour a day, not that much, is going to put you into the top 1% of readers in the modern world. And it's going to compound over the rest of your life. Totally worth it.
And in 2025, I would even argue you're in the top 0.1%, because so many people just dismiss reading. There's too many distractions. Like, and I promise listeners, we will get to security, but on that reading topic, and this is me getting older, but I feel like you get tired of certain things. You get tired of watching TV, movies, and you're looking for something else to satisfy your brain. And so you should go to books, and then you should go to, deeper levels, beyond, say, a fiction book, something written by a human eventually kind of gets tiring. And I know my dad listens to this. I know he knows what I'm going to say, but he's basically been a scholar of this Urantia book, which I'm sure you heard of it, but it's basically like a 2,000 page text that blends science, religion, philosophy, and it gives this extraordinarily detailed and expansive cosmology that encompasses the entire structure, organization, evolutionary purpose of the whole cosmos, from uh, the infinite realities of eternity to the finite realms of time and space. Like you go so deep, and once you read that before bed, it'll knock you out. But it also lets you think deeply about yourself and what your position is in this world outside of just the typical run of the mill book that you might find somewhere.
I agree with you 100%. I haven't read the Urantia book, right?
Your Rancha book, yes.
I know a little bit about it because that book struck a lot of people in the Anglosphere in its time. It may entertain you. I actually went on a similar journey. You're gonna judge me for this, and I accept it. I deserve it. But I actually grew up in my late teens reading a similar book by another crazy philosopher, if you will, that had a similar scope that starts with the beginning of the universe and the challenges God Himself faces in constructing it and maintaining it against the nature of time and how to deal with these things, and uses that as a foil, as kind of the structure of an allegorical tale to explain how human beings came to be in their fundamental challenges and difficulties. And it's also a tome. It's 1,400 pages. It's called Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson. And it ended up having a really dramatic and formative effect on how I see the world. It kind of forces you, when you bathe yourself in these types of ideas, and it doesn't have to be, the Urantia, it doesn't have to be Beelzebub's Tales. It can be, there's lots of stuff that'll do this, right? Some people read David Deutsch's books, and they get a similar kind of vibe. He's a little bit more modern physicist, so it kind of appeals more to the materialist angle that dominates most people. But when you dive into this kind of stuff and you try to grapple with, what is the nature of reality itself? Mm-hmm. What am I as a human being? Where do I come from? Mm-hmm. Where am I going? Your mind becomes saturated with this big picture thinking. You can't help but look at these, apparently small and mundane moments of everyday life and situate them into a grander context of, okay, well, what is this going to make of me? Where is this going to project in my soul, and what am I going to become as a result of these little things? And yeah, it can put you out. It's heavy reading. It's going to be costly. But, day after day, if you do that, if you engage with that, I think you inevitably become a much better person as a result. Because you're always thinking of, okay, how does this fit into my life's purpose? How does this fit into what I am and what I could be and what I should be? And that is really, really healthy, I think. I feel.
Wholeheartedly agree. And a lot of this comes with age and it could come earlier for some. Like once you hit a material goal, you realize that, the number going up doesn't really change anything. And you start to look deeper and about all the things you mentioned. And there's some trigger event. I think not all people get that trigger event, but when you do, you start to look deeper and really think about, exactly what you say. What are we doing here? What is life about? And it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. And I think it's something that people should pull themselves away from their screen sometime and just feel free to dive deeper.
They should. And it's also, and here, we have to feed the crowd. It's also really useful from a security perspective, right? Because
tell me, link it into the token.
Well, hold your horses there. Hold your horses. Yes, of course. Security is a technical, detail-oriented field by necessity, right? The nature of security is grappling with specific and particular technologies and how they interface with, whatever your attack surface it is, whatever purpose you're trying to achieve. How do you protect the integrity of whatever system you're looking at? But just as you can take a really detail-oriented approach, for example, in reviewing smart contracts, where you're going line by line and trying to find the weaknesses that people are looking at, you can also take a much more meta approach, looking at the whole system. And a number of the best security researchers, and certainly, thinking beyond just researchers, but also security leaders, they make a whole career out of looking at the big picture view. How do you
Mm-hmm.
protect the whole system, inclusive of all the potential risk factors that could be striking? Because the attack surface is much larger than just code. I mean, classically, when you're looking at most organizations, the major attack surface that is most vulnerable and hardest to protect is the people themselves, because they make such constant errors. But that big picture thinking allows you to really step outside the box, outside the expectations and outside the rigidity of the models that most people use in thinking of, okay, well, how do I keep this safe? And be like, okay, well, are there attack vectors that I could never even think of here? Right. And then, when we're looking at, say, the rise of DeFi summer and how that led to all sorts of attacks and hacks, that was really the introduction of a whole new class of attacks that were basically financial engineering, say flash loan attacks, which were very popular for a few years there. And there are still bug hunters today that are primarily looking at the system from a holistic perspective. I think of, for example, Joran as a good example of that, who are targeting, really using a much more meta perspective to look at security. And I think you can go a lot wider than that. Certainly the attackers like Lazarus Group and others are thinking from a much more meta perspective. And that's how they're able to engage such mega heists, not to our benefit, but nonetheless happening. So there is a lot of advantage in this kind of view, even though I think it's quite uncommon in our industry.
Very, very good advice. It reminds me of just thinking about problems, always to step back, look at the broader picture, and you do kind of reveal some things that you would have never seen. And it's as simple as that, to be honest. To pause, don't drink coffee that day, kick back, and just look at the whole picture.
I like how you bring up don't drink coffee. Because, right? I am a caffeine Max. Well, Maxi, maybe not. I am a caffeine appreciator. Okay.
Also, yes.
Right. But caffeine also destabilizes your mind in the same way that it makes you more rapid to respond. It makes you more reactive. And if you're really trying to crack a hardened system, what you need sometimes is be able to go into a dark room and just to think out the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth order consequences, following the chain of reasoning, the chain of logic, and see, okay, where did the creator, the architect of the system, where did he stop? Because he may not have gone to the fifth order consequences. He may not have anticipated all the ways that people may have used a particular function or a particular system, or he might have had some assumptions that he never reflected on. And that could be your opportunity at the end of the day.
It's absolutely right.
Amazing, but doesn't always help, right? It can block specifically those types of moments.
Yeah, if every SR is looking for bugs on caffeine, well, do the opposite. That's my strategy with everything. Do the opposite. Take some mushrooms. Go for a big walk. I forget who I talked. I think it was Obrant. Who was Obrant on the podcast, and he was doing the optimism competition one time, and he went out for a little mushroom walk, and it unlocked this pathway. And he was able to, I think, confirm a high bug after doing the mushroom walk. And it just, you have different pathways that can open up based upon, I mean, what are the common ones? Obviously, there's drug use, there's exercise, meditation, all these different pathways open and close in your brain. And so being able to leverage that, who cares how it's viewed? It's like, that's a superpower if you know what you're doing.
Totally. By the way, you lift, right?
I do. And I put it down. I lift it up, I put it down.
You lift a lot too, don't you?
I don't actually. I switched to a lot of calisthenics, outdoor stuff, body weights, but I do still lift heavy weights, and that is because I know for a fact that I feel better afterwards, and it triggers your testosterone production in a way that calisthenics does not. Just like running, you have to sprint, you have to do heavy weights to trigger that testosterone kind of flywheel, and that's healthy. That makes you feel like a man. If you don't do those very difficult physical things, you don't feel the same way. You don't feel as good.
100%. I'm jealous of you there. I mostly lift heavy weights. I would love, my dream is to get the body weight stuff to the point where I can get on the rings and get more into the gymnastic side of the equation. but I'm not yet there. The let's say the accumulated effects of Immunefi have left its toll on my body. So step by step, we're trying to get back. But as a fun little note, if I had to build a hypothetically a financial portfolio of security researchers, if I could take bets on security researchers, and there may be something a little bit in there when the token conversation comes up. If I could take bets on security researchers and their performance, I would absolutely want to create a portfolio of security researchers who lift or who do, very physically demanding things, because I am quite convinced that that is a predictor of ultimate performance. I think that gives like such a mental supercharge, and I think you see that panned out in people's ability to find incredible vulnerabilities and create value for the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think you have to take care of the body as well as the mind. And unfortunately, you've seen the meme with the shrimp, the prawn is sitting on the chair in front of the laptop, and people. That's a lot of these guys' lives. Like they are just they dig so deep, and it's great that they do. Everyone has to dive in. You can't not spend this amount of time in front of the computer, but you have to find a balance. Like you have to literally crowbar yourself out of there and just go sprint up a hill. You have to do something. You can't sit there 8 hours a day and expect to do this for more than a couple years before you get smoked.
You make a funny point. Like I don't know this prawn meme, so you'll have to send it to me later. You have to hook me up. But when you say that, the thing I'm immediately thinking of is the movie Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
So there's that meme where people will put the caption of they'll respond to a tweet, and they'll put the chat bubble into the image, and then underneath it'll show the insect from Starship Troopers at the laptop typing it in to pretend like someone else's tweet came from this message to basically say this is coming from the aliens. The bug aliens want you to do this. And so I'm just thinking of like, oh, we have to spend 8 hours at the computer, which we totally do. I get that. But I'm thinking like, okay, that's what the bug aliens would be typing onto Twitter right there to get us. When secretly we just need the mushroom walks. That's when we need a riptide. We need the mushroom walks and the caffeine doses and the darkroom meditations and of course copious amounts of tobacco. That's truly the way. That's the way.
Oh, he's got the nicotine link. You know who has? We're going to dive into that. You know who's got this figured out though is the guys from Blockian. One of them has they injured their back, and so this guy is doing his audits with one of the Apple Vision Pros.
Oh my god!
And he's like in a recliner, and he's got this Apple Vision Pro, and he's fucking knocking it out of the park with these audits. Like he's kicked back, man. He's matrixing the whole thing. I think he's one step ahead.
I'm gonna have to ask him about that because there was a point when the Vision Pro came out where I was like, can I finally abandon my monitor? Mm-hmm. Can I finally leave my desktop experience behind and just go straight to walking in the garden and doing what I need to do right then and there on a phone call? Is that what I can do? And then I saw all the memes that apparently it's heavy and you can't do that and it sucks for that. And
you can't leave your house.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. I mean, I dream of being able to move my office outside entirely and be able to do all my stuff there, having my, hippie bare feet, grounding on the grass mm-hmm. and sitting in the Portuguese sunlight and soaking it all in. But I haven't quite figured it out yet. And if you figure that out, given your unique advantages, which I know you have, then do share the secrets because God knows the rest of us, we need to touch grass more. And if only we could work while touching grass, that would be the best combination.
I agree. We still need to figure it out, but I will give you a life hack. Are you in an apartment or a house?
I'm in a house.
Okay, you're probably in a castle. Anyway, you're in your Portuguese castle. And what you need, this is simple. Everyone could do this. Just put a pull-up bar, any spot where you could do a pull-up bar. And you always have something going on, like you're compiling something, you're waiting for something to load. Just get your ass up and then knock out 5-10 pull-ups. And have it nearby. And it's a simple body weight thing. And then have a dip bar. But just integrating that in all the time. Man, you could knock out hundreds during the day if you just jump up. That's the easiest hack to kind of don't turn into the prawn, which I sent you the meme. But anyway, Mitchell, I want to ask you, and I didn't dig too deep into your background, but something interesting came up, and I'm a crypto OG, right? I started 2009 building Bitcoin miners. I saw this project that I thought was really cool back in the ICO days called Steemit. Did you work with them?
I did.
What the hell happened? That was such a cool idea. ICO mania, and it was like, if no one knows what Steemit was, you could basically get paid for posting things, and everyone thought, "Wow, it's so cool!" And then it vanished from cyberspace. So what happened?
Well, it didn't vanish. It was exited.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. So for context, I was the first growth executive for Steemit. I was the guy when they were starting and they were trying to get it going. This was really the first consumer crypto product at the end of the day. Oh, hold on. This was the first crypto consumer product. Sorry about that. Phone calls coming in. People want to chat. It's like, no, I'm busy. And when we were starting that out, it was just this crazy idea. Can we use the inflationary mechanics that central banks have innovated on? And that was a real social technology innovation, in my view. Can we use that in order to drive content creation, specifically create a superior, high quality content compared to what was available predominantly there on places like Twitter, on Facebook, on Reddit, and the like? And the answer is yes, we could. But what started when I joined is just basically a few hundred actives. We managed to get that over the course of 2017 into thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of users. I think at their peak, there were a million of accounts engaging.
I didn't know it was that big.
It got really big. And it had quite a ride. I mean, when I started there, the market cap of that thing was 15 mil. And by the time I wrapped up most of my strategies, it was 600. And at its peak, it got to about 2 bill. Jeez. And that was in 2017. This was the third largest coin. It was just Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then Steemit for a time. So it was quite a ride. Now, ultimately, Steemit was kind of the victim of its own success because we created this incredible decentralized proof of stake blockchain. And it really worked. It worked well at scale, but it got so big because we were writing all the content to the chain. And we had none of the scalability technologies that we had today. I'm sure you'll remember also then that the Ethereum blockchain, I mean, we were basically only doing ERC20 transactions for the most part. And ICOs were the particular use case. But even that was leading to gas costs that were extremely high at the time relative to what we could absorb. And this is a pre-crypto market of any size, right? When Ethereum was huge in those days, people were like, oh my God, it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It's incredible. Oh my God. And like now that's nothing. But at the time, we all thought that was massive. And that was creating enormous server costs because you had basically 21 stakers, 21 validators who were processing the whole chain. And so that led to a challenging growth problem. Now, the way out of that, there were two ways, right? The way out of that was ultimately going to be, okay, do we want to go ads or do we not? And in the final conclusion, we concluded we didn't want to go ads, which in hindsight was definitely the way forward. We should have done ads, even though it would have been lame and uncool. It would also have been scalable and would have monetized the whole business. And we didn't want to go that direction. And in the end, the CEO there, Ned Scott, he took a different route and he ended up selling Steemit to Tron, to Justin's son.
Tron bought it.
That's right.
Oh, I recall this. Okay. It's all coming back to me now.
That led to a whole, little drama because even though, Steemit had all the IP and had the right to sell it, and they didn't indeed sell the business, the community didn't necessarily want to go to Tron. And this led to a hard fork where you had the original Steemit on Tron, and then you had Hive operating separately. And that's where Hive originally came from.
Okay.
The business was sold. I mean, it was a very successful exit at the end of the day. Didn't become, unfortunately, the new Reddit or the new major social media that I was hoping for. And I think that opportunity still exists, by the way. I think those mechanics could work. Like we had figured out 80% of it, but the last 20 ended up being critical. And I think sometime over the next few years, someone's going to come along and they're going to put all that together and work magic out of it once again.
Wow, very cool. That's yeah. I mean, a lot of projects like that, you just because the hype cycle ended and everyone if you didn't sell at the top, and you just kind of forget about these projects. But hearing the backstory on that is actually very. I should be like a an early blockchain historian. I was going through some photos recently, and I have this graduation photo from my MBA, whatever I did. It was free. Don't mock me. And I looked at the back, and there was a private key on the back. And I was
Oh,
like, why the
man.
hell would I have written this on the back? This is from 2018. I'm like, what the hell would I? And I'm using Grok, and I'm like using LLMs. I'm like, what the hell is this private key? And the best idea that I can guess was from Peercoin, if you remember Peercoin.
I remember Peercoin.
And I was like, oh yeah, maybe I have some fucking Peercoin. Dude, trying to spin up like these old L1s, trying to like find out and derive it from early wallets, even if you have an early Bitcoin wallet, it's not easy to do. It's a pain in the ass. And I eventually just gave up. I'm probably like, okay, Peercoin's trading at what, a penny? Okay, who gives a fuck? But it's like those things, man. It's always interesting to look back in time. Not even less than 10 years ago, and see how different the space was.
Totally. Everything has changed. It's like it became a whole new world. It's crazy how things have developed. As
Yeah.
a side note, if you're curious, my foray into security also began dealing with those kinds of projects myself. Because in those days, I'm sure you remember, everything sucked, and it was pretty unsafe. It was a
Hmm.
pretty unsafe environment. So in order to survive, in order just to keep it going and not get robbed, and there were so many different ways to get scammed, you had to learn security for yourself. You
Hmm.
had to learn, your own private key setup. You had to learn how your wallets worked. You had to be pretty judicious, pretty careful about your choice of machines or operating systems and how you were engaging with the wider world. I mean, now it's also a landmine, but at least we have better protections built into the various products that we use. We didn't have any of those back then. So that ended up being, a very convenient foray. I'm sure in hindsight, you look back and you weren't expecting necessarily that to be the start of a security career, but all those pivotal moments and those adventures that you had ended up being the foundation for your security skill sets to come.
Isn't that strange how things evolve? And you know what else is strange when you think about that is that was the age of the L1, right? And I'm curious what you think about that, because L1s have had a resurgence. You have Hyperliquid. You have is Barachain L2 or L1? I don't know.
L1.
L1, yeah. But you have these L1s that have now popped out. They could, because you can bridge to them. I mean, you could do atomic swaps before using like BlockNet and some other early solutions, but L1s have come back in fashion. What do you kind of see about this? And I know you have a thesis I'd like to hear on many blockchains in the future versus just a few. So maybe you could expand on that a bit.
Sure. So I was part of this early push. The way I met my co-founder for Immunefi, Traven, was by working on NXT. Do you remember NXT? So that was the first, I think that was the first proof of stake blockchain. Certainly the first really extensible proof of stake blockchain with a lot of financial functionality on it. And even at that time, I was like, okay, how much room really is there for L1s in the market? Like, are we all going to use one single mega database at the end of the day? And is that going to be how it goes? Or are there going to be many? And I grappled with this question for years. And in that time, of course, we saw all sorts of layer ones get launched, and the vast majority of those were total failures. And your pure coin is still out there, but it doesn't do anything. And there's Clam Coin, and there were some weird machine coins, and there's like Dentacoin, and all sorts of just
A
stupid
coin
things.
only for dentists. Yep,
Right.
still going
Then
strong.
remember Trigger Coin? Just
No.
it was a coin for unlocking triggers for guns. The
Oh
dumbest
fuck.
idea. But whatever. They took a shot. They tried. It was something, that's for sure. And I eventually cracked, why I thought this was working or not. And of course, when you think about why there are so many L1s, there are two things that drive this. Number one is the speculative side, and number two is the fundamental side. And both of them trend towards the mass proliferation of L1s, regardless of the fact that the death rate of an L1 is pretty high and the odds are against you by default. This also applies to L2s, by the way. Any blockchain is going to be facing this kind of challenge. And on the speculative side is everybody dreams of being the next Ethereum. Okay. It's an incredible outcome. And even if your odds are only, single digit percent, low single digit percent, the upside of creating a L1 or L2, say like an Arbitrum that is worth, 15, $20 billion, I mean, that's incredible. That's an incredible opportunity. And so it drives people on the speculative front to go and innovate on technology, even though the odds are against them by default. I mean, it's incredibly difficult to build a platform business where you have a self-sustaining economic network that subsidizes all these compute costs and makes it viable for builders and entrepreneurs to really stick with the business. That's super hard. But the dream is so large that the expected value of that payoff is positive. So people do it anyways. So that's one that drives it. And that's what's driving, say, a lot of these new L1s that we're seeing emerging last year and this year. And they're going to be new L1s that are following this thesis, trying to be the next Ethereum or now the next Solana next year and the year after that. That play is going to continue to unfold. Okay, it's not going to stop. Even though it's lame, it's not going to stop. It's going to keep going because people want that opportunity, and a few of them are going to take it. Now, the other side of that is the fundamentals base. And there's a completely new class that's been emerging over the last few years that is not connected to the speculative premium per se, or rather is connected to that speculative premium only indirectly. And that opportunity is based on, hey, look, I have a ton of users. I have a ton of capital. I have a real use case that works for me. Why should I go and pay all this compute costs and lose control of my user base by putting it on an Ethereum or even someone else's L2? Why do that when I can launch my own blockchain, for which the marginal costs of launching a blockchain are going down by the year? It's cheaper than ever to launch a new blockchain, Riptide. You can spin something up for a few $1,000,000 or less, depending on how light your burden is. And if I'm a Sony, if I'm a Stripe, if I'm a MoneyGram, if I'm a Western Union, I can afford, if I'm a Robinhood, right? If I'm any of these businesses, if I'm a Coinbase, right? If I'm a Kraken, I can afford to spin up my own blockchain. It's cheaper than any number of other projects that I might do. And I can put my user base there. Okay, I can funnel them into this environment and then find new ways to monetize them over a whole, suite of DeFi or CDeFi services, while keeping them in my partially walled, partially open garden. And on top of that, at any point, I can decide to put a token on that thing, and maybe I can capture a multi-billion-dollar speculative premium. And you can see players like Tempo. Tempo raised $500 million at a $6 billion valuation a few weeks ago. I mean, yeah, right? And they're making that exact play. And you can see something like Base. I mean, there's rumors around that Base may launch a token. Coinbase doesn't need to do that. They're farming Base. They're earning tons. They're keeping their users locked in their ecosystem. It's a really, really great opportunity for them. And they were able to create a ton of value while pushing crypto as a result. But they can also capture a speculative premium that they can take that token value as a result and use that to drive even further growth without diluting their underlying equity. And so this is the second wave of L1s and L2s that's going to be emerging, and it's going to be the predominant one, in my view, over the next 5 or 10 years. That's going to get really, really, really big. And this is how we get to what I called the world of 1,000 blockchains, where you have an infinite web of partially permissioned, somewhat permissionless, different value props blockchains, all bridging, all connecting to one another, and all creating real value for users, some with the fundamentals that can sustain themselves indefinitely, that pushes back, that kind of obviates and eliminates the need for everything to centralize on just one single chain. And that's where all these L1s, L2s are coming from, and why they're going to continue to keep coming, even though from a distance it doesn't look like it makes sense. But when you actually look under the hood and see the financials, you're like, no, this is a great bet to make, and they're just going to keep doing it.
Thank you. Very good take, and I want to offer my opinion on this. So why? Because you said I know because it's lame. Right. And the context on that, if the listeners don't know, is it's lame from people that have been in the space that see what's going on, which they view these chains as like, okay, this is max extract, money grab, VCs trying to exit, this and that. They have a narrow viewpoint at looking at this because I know, because I've been in that camp. And what that viewpoint is it's like, hey, Ethereum already does it all, or my favorite chain already does it all. Why do we need Unichain? Why do we need this other one? And so, but you get trapped into that, and you expanded on a beautiful point of view there, where you're looking at the whole as we discussed before, you're stepping back, you're looking at the bigger picture and seeing how this kind of has a multiplier effect. And so I had a chat with a VC a couple days ago, since we're doing our raise for our AI tool, and we had a little disagreement because his view was that there's only going to be like we have Aave, we have these big protocols, and that will centralize. Because my argument was like there's going to be many protocols, many blockchains that will constantly need security audits, and this whole security ecosystem will massively multiply. And his view was kind of like everything's going to concentrate into the parties that already exist. And I said, well, that's true. You're always going to have those. These big names will concentrate, but the sheer permissionless nature, and like you explained, it was a good point, was the speculative nature as well, will just cause this whole ecosystem to continually expand. In my view, there's no limit to it. So the demand is infinite.
There is a risk there. I'll throw you something to think about. And for all of our other colleagues who are thinking about building security businesses of any kind, and I'll note yours is exciting. I'm excited about that thesis. I'm excited about that pitch. I think what you're doing can really work out in a big way. And God willing, other people come in and also want to create value in the future in that same way. But one challenge that we have is, yes, on the one side, the permissionless nature of the crypto economy means that it's a huge growth opportunity. Okay. And especially like the way to imagine the crypto economy, to contextualize it, is not as, here's a particular industry doing stuff. No, it's to understand it more like as a somewhat akin to a nation state economy, but a nation state economy that started from a finance and compute first perspective. And this economy goes into new markets, including, for example, the vast majority of the third world with its less mature and less scaled financial service economy, and says, hey, look, I have better currencies that I can offer you. And now, not only do I have better currencies that I can offer you that are safer than what you can find at home, but I also have better financial products that I can offer you. And it vampire attacks the financial economies of those smaller countries that can't afford to operate at similar levels of scale. And it attracts more and more capital. And this is how the crypto economy is growing fundamentally, the combination of investment into these currencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana. And then on the other hand, once that money is there, then circulating it and making it more and more useful. And it's growing and growing and growing to compete with ultimately the most financialized economies of the world, which are the Western world led by the United States and China and the Eastern economies as well. Now, while that's happening, and that does create this incredible kind of permissionless growth vista, imagine accessing, the financial markets of the majority of the world, right? In 10 or 20 years, you could see the crypto economy on a financial basis being larger than the financial economies of most countries and competing directly with these heavyweights. But due to this same open and permissionless nature, you have this power law effect, okay? And also due to the nature of how protocols are considered secure, you have this power law effect that pushes TVL, that pushes value into the larger and larger protocols disproportionately. And so a good example of that is, for example, in the lending markets, right? Why did he say, Aave is going to concentrate things? Well, because Aave, has as much lending volume as basically the rest of the lending industry combined in crypto. Okay, or at least the public. I mean, there's lots of OTC stuff and private stuff that you never see on chain, but that's a slightly different market. And this creates a power law effect when it comes to security budgets. And so the central challenge when looking at how the security market is growing that we all have to face as practitioners in this field and that we have to grapple with is there's a small number of customers that have extremely large security budgets. Think of like the big Immunefi customers, like a Lido or a Sky MakerDAO or an Aave, right? And they can afford to spend many millions on security a year. And then you have a long tail of customers with much smaller security budgets. And they don't have millions of dollars. They have like a few $100K if they're mid-sized, and if they're small size, they have less than $100K. And in order to make successful businesses in crypto, we have to find a way to thread this needle where we can penetrate, either starting with the big customers with a few marquee deals, or going after the long tail of customers with much smaller budgets, and so they can afford much less on a per contract or on a per technology price, and then make that work and expand across the rest of the stack towards the larger and larger and larger players. And that has been a problem that few businesses in crypto security have cracked to date.
Exactly. And that's kind of our objective, not to put our thing out there too much, but we're trying to help secure this space and being able to offer high quality security for a small sum of money, where basically anyone that wants to deploy a protocol is able to afford it. And I think that's the only way this space is taken seriously and it grows to the size that I see it growing is fixing the security problem.
100%.
Uh,
100%.
Mitch, we have to talk about the token, the IMU token. What is going on? Everyone wants to know. You put it out there. You told us in Singapore, and now you have us hanging on the edge of our seat. Give us the details, man. What is out there? What can you share? What is the hunt? What's happening here?
Okay, there's a lot of different things to that question. But the simplest answer, the core, is the IMU token is going to be the value creation asset powering the entire Immunefi ecosystem. And if you know about Immunefi, then you know that we're much bigger than just bug bounties. Of course, we cut our teeth providing bug bounties that secure the entirety of the ecosystem. If we look at TVL on a percentage basis, 93% of TVL is secured by Immunefi, mostly with bug bounties, but also with our other solutions today, which is crazy. But the token is here to sit at the center of that because we are also uniting many of our partners, many of the best security firms in the industry into one aggregated product, which is the Immunefi Magnus platform, so that you have every possible layer of security, best in class, known, proven, curated, validated to stay safe in a world that is getting more and more hostile. And the token is the key for unlocking us to do that. It gives us the way to align everybody's interests in the same direction so that we can all focus on doing what we do best to create something marvelous. And remember, in security, no one player, right? No one player can create the best technology in every single category. Security is specialized. People have their own unique talents. The problems get very nitty gritty. As a simple matter with auditing, there's no one auditor that is the best at every single stack, right? You have some guys who are great at Solidity. You have other guys who are masters of Viper. You have other guys who are much better at the Solana stack. You have other guys who've mastered the Cosmos stack. The people who do Bitcoin stuff are completely separate from everybody else, and so on and so forth. And that's how everything in security works. So if we want to stay safe at scale, then we have to bring all these tools together in order to create an impenetrable layer, an impenetrable stack of kind of security in the Swiss cheese model, right? If you know how that works, you stack one layer of cheese in front of the other, and each layer has holes that attacks can get through. But your bet is that by saying, hey, we don't just have one layer, we've got 4, we've got 5, we've got 6, that no attacks can get through. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're uniting, pulling every part of the stack from, PR reviews and protecting at the level of the GitHub pipeline to audits, of course, themselves, formal verification, fuzzing solutions, bug bounties, where, of course, Immunefi, we've been doing this forever, monitoring solutions down the line, and even firewalling solutions. You may have seen our announcement there. We've created something really unique on that front. Bringing all these together and even more that we haven't announced yet into a single stack that is effortless for a protocol to adopt. That's a lot of different moving pieces. That's a lot of different parties. We're not doing it all ourselves. We're doing it with the security researcher community on Immunefi to do this, right? They're the ones who are going in and doing the PR reviews to keep people safe. They're the ones who are going in and doing audits, us and our audit partners of various kinds, not just us. They're the ones who are building bespoke monitoring solutions. We have 3 monitoring solutions integrated into Immunefi Magnus, and Immunefi builds none of them. We integrate all of them, right? In order to do that. And the token unites us, the token aligns us, the token helps us push in the same direction in a way that we can maximize long-term growth and success. So that's a very high level overview of the token. Of course, there's lots of particulars like, okay, what are the utilities and how do the mechanics work and what is the hunts program? We can dive into that, but you let me know what's going to be most interesting for you.
Sure. I think give me a high level on the mechanics. I'd love to hear different use cases for tokens and how that'll integrate with, bug hunters already looking for bugs. Okay, great, Mitch. We can earn a token on top of this, and then what I use the token for is this like a farming token? High level mechanics. I think it'd be very useful.
Sure. So the first thing to keep in mind in the center of all this is, again, this term I used in the beginning, value creation. Okay. The IMU token is the central value creation asset, which means the better that we can do in providing security value to customers and driving ultimately, like any business, revenue through that at scale. And Immunefi has hundreds and hundreds of customers. We've secured almost 600 protocols to date. Okay. And driving them to this whole stack of solutions that are ultimately going to keep them safe, the better everything is going to ultimately run with the token. All the utilities, in terms of how I think about the utilities, I think of them as enhancing the security flywheel or enhancing the growth flywheel. Okay? The first angle on that, let's talk a little bit about enhancing the security flywheel. We've created mechanics around how the security researchers themselves can work on Immunefi to give them extra rewards for doing the security work that is most valuable. And so, for example, we're going to be taking a bunch of tokens and we're going to say, hey, look, there's these tokens that are available for security researchers if they're going to do the most important challenges, be that hunting on specific programs, participating in specific competitions, working on specific technologies, whatever is needed to drive the best possible security outcomes, there's going to be extra rewards for that. So this is one side of the equation where it's like, okay, I can participate in the overall growth of the Immunefi ecosystem and the security ecosystem growth by extension, right? Since Immunefi covers so much of it already. If I am doing the most important work as a security researcher or as a security technologist, building the most critical solutions. But we wanted to do more than that. We wanted to draw attention to these things. We wanted to show people how valuable this is and encourage it. So there's going to be ways for token holders, for example, to stake their tokens to security researchers in order to increase the potential bonuses that they might get for hunting on Immunefi and contributing security value, however they might do that. Okay. I talked a little bit in the beginning. Okay, if I could create a portfolio of security researchers who lift, I would do that. Well, you're going to be able to do that. Okay.
What does this remind me of? Was it called Friends Network? What was the one?
There was
something like that. Yeah, you could
Friends.
buy tokens of various ex personalities or whoever, and I don't know what happened. I think it died, but I think it's a great idea, though.
Yes. And this thing is positive sum at the end of the day, because when you are going out there and you're hunting and you're finding an amazing vulnerability, you're creating that security value. That security value is what underwrites this whole staking mechanic and makes it work, right? You're going to get paid real money for that. You're going to create immense security value that keeps a project safe when they could have otherwise suffered serious harm or been hacked or otherwise. And then on top of that, you're going to get IMU tokens for your work. And the more people who support you in doing that, the more people who want to sponsor that activity, the more people who want to give you patronage for that, the more that you will earn. So that is one way that we're going to drive the security flywheel. Another one, for it.
Let me ask you one thing, just a strange thought. Is there any thought about if you have IMU tokens and say you're a great SR and you've reviewed a protocol every which way and you're like, hey, I'm betting on this protocol. Like, I couldn't find any bugs. I think it's secure, where you could stake with that protocol through Immunefi, stake your tokens and be like, I'm betting that, I'm basically vouching for it, that it's secure.
We have big plans in this direction, Riptide. We have big plans, but things start step by step. So we're going to have some version of this. The first version of this is going to be a simple way where if you have IMU tokens and you want to back a particular protocol security, you can stake to that protocol. And as a result, they're going to get direct security benefits in the form of discounts and premium features available via Immunefi and its ecosystem of partners. This is the first step in the direction of what you just described.
Mitch, this could go bad though. You could see a bunch of SRs get wrecked, like everyone stakes it on Balancer, and then everyone gets wiped out with some super edge case that no one ever saw, and you have SRs getting essentially liquidated from their IMU tokens, a first of its kind.
That's why this needs to go step by step. So the beginning, we're just going to start with the staking side in order to secure those benefits, right? So it's not going to have the same loss potential that would be implied if your stake was, say, underwriting some type of insurance mechanic, or if it was underwriting some kind of, bet on the other side. That won't be there in the initial versions, but that's absolutely something I'm exploring into the future. At the end of the day, Riptide, all of this is around how do we make the ecosystem safe? How do we make it so that DeFi and on-chain finance and on-chain financial infrastructure is safer than the traditional financial industry? And so where we go in terms of using these mechanics, whether we integrate some other things, like you can imagine a world where we might explore prediction markets, right, in the future for this type of thing, where you would have such kind of risk. That is all going to be driven around and only going to come about insofar as it directly drives protocol security. And security researchers are going to have a front row seat to all of that.
Very interesting. And do you have a date? Do we have any sort of range that you can give?
Soon.
When you are being soon. I love it. I love
Imminently.
it. We got to bring back the old memes. The when moon, soon. I miss when moon.
When moon was a good one.
When moon was good, man.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
I capped this at an hour, but I want to, and I'm sure you got other important things to do rather than talk to anonymous people on podcasts. But we need to talk about nicotine. Okay, you're smoking a cigar right now. I am a cigar fan. I lived in Miami, got some good cigars down there. I have one occasionally, and now I've switched to the occasional nicotine patch to what I think it wards away the evils. Like I travel a lot internationally, and I feel like it keeps sickness at bay. Give me your pro nicotine thoughts.
Okay, I'm going to be possibly the first, possibly the last person, I suppose, on your podcast that is allowed to give this heresy. But I am probably one of the only people who say that nicotine, for some people, possibly even for many people, is good for you. And there's a few different things that fit into that. When I was young, I was like an anti-smoking zealot.
Oh, same here.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I came from a puritanical Canadian family, and whatever we did, we were puritanical about it. North Americans, they have it in their blood. You don't notice it when you're growing up, but that's kind of how we are. And I was about that, and I got challenged by randos on the internet that wasn't true. And in response to that, I was studying medical statistics at the time. I deep dove as much of the available evidence that I could, and what I found shocked me, which was that a lot of the flack that smoking gets is not actually true. And if you look and try to unwind the data, you can't validate it. You can't find the sources. You can't find the claims. And a lot of the statistics, what you can find, are poorly done, and they don't show what they say they will.
Now, smoking what, though? Cigarettes?
Even for cigarettes, okay? And
but are we talking manufactured cigarettes or hand-rolled? Like, you really have to be specific.
Even the worst shit. Okay. And I think I think like normal machine rolled cigarettes with tons of chemicals are garbage and you shouldn't smoke them. Okay. But even those are not the villains that they're made out to be. And when you look at hand rolled cigarettes, and when you especially get into the world of organic tobacco, I used to buy the leaves myself and cut them and process them, or whether you look at fine cigars, then you see the opposite things in the data. For example, life longevity of cigar smokers is higher than the average person in basically everywhere you look. And not only that, it does seem to have effects against particular diseases as well. So I made this famous bet here in Portugal with a friend of mine, a brilliant technologist and philosopher who helped create Brave many years ago during COVID. And I said, well, look, I'm going to smoke up because I think that smoking will have a protective effect against COVID. And I back that because in the course of a long series of plagues and diseases, smoking has proven to be advantageous in those times. I mean, you see that even going back to the earliest records around the Black Plague, where tobacconists did not get sick as a result, which was shocking to people at the time. They used to make children smoke in order to deal with it. And of course, what happened in the course of COVID is we discovered that smokers had a dramatically less prevalency to get COVID and also have severe symptoms. And you would see these results all over the world: China, Greece, Italy,
Oh,
South America,
100% true.
everywhere.
My brother smokes like a chimney, never got it.
Happened to lots of people, man. Happened to lots of people. And all of that, that's here we're just talking about health. That doesn't even get into the primary benefits of nicotine, which is, in my view, nicotine is the drug of choice for priests because it is the very few things in this world that increases not just IQ and memory in a significant way, almost half a standard deviation. Almost nothing does that. Almost nothing does that. Okay. But in addition to that, it gives you more willpower. And you've seen this, you've gone to the end of a long day, you're struggling with a heart problem, and you have a cigar or you put on a patch, and that gives you 40 minutes, an hour of extra room to boost, to go, to push hard intellectually. And there's almost nothing in the world that does that nicotine does. So I think it's something everybody has to be careful with. It is not without its risks. It's not without its downsides. But in some, it creates a value that almost nothing has. And if you're really looking to perform at the top of your industry, at the top of your field, then smoking is something that you should entertain, if only a cigar every once in a while.
Very good points. Couple things. The delivery mechanism is, I think, the point of contention, right? Like I'm doing the nicotine patch every now and then, which I think is the cleanest way to possibly deliver it to yourself. However, there are other side effects with if you smoke, if you inhale the smoke, there is a deep breathing going on, which I think there's an ancillary positive benefit to that. But there's, I think, a clear negative of inhaling any sort of burnt material into your lungs. How do you kind of get around that?
I think that that's like an intuitive thing that people feel, and there is some truth for it, especially if it's prolonged. So, for example, when we look at the archaeological studies of natives in the Pacific Northwest who used to live in pit houses, and they're stuck underground with these fires that are putting soot in the winter, and they have to breathe that in all the time, you do see kind of prolonged negative effects. But it's not as much as people might say. Human beings have been dealing with this for a very, very long time. And unless you're really chain smoking each day, every day, something really nauseous, you probably don't have serious effects. So if you're doing a cigar every few days, I doubt the effects are serious. I haven't seen any data to support that. And of course, the classic example is when you look at smoking in other contexts, whether you look at vaping or you look at marijuana smoking and similar things, you don't really find super compelling evidence of long-term harm from casual smoking. Not that I've been able to find in any material amounts. Of course, if you want to, ramp up the dosages, I think it could become harmful. But in small amounts, I think you're probably going to be good.
Very interesting. I like to hear that. I love the different takes. After all this stuff happened with COVID and all the news, this and that, I mean, you really just have to kind of figure things out on your own. So on that
100%.
on that bombshell, Mitchell, thank you for joining, and we will see everyone next time on the blockchain.